All right, let's dive into this Hong Kong fintech scene. Judging by this stack of articles and reports you've given us, you really want to get a good sense of what's happening over there.
Seems like you want to go deeper than just, the surface level stuff.
Exactly. We've got a pretty good mix here, I think. Historical analysis, future trends, even some case studies.
Yeah, you're not just looking for information. You want those real actionable insights.
By the end of this deep dive, you'll have a solid understanding of what's driving this whole ecosystem.
And hopefully some aha moments, too.
Yeah.
About where the real opportunities are.
Okay, so
It set the stage.
I think it's important to understand just where Hong Kong sits, right? It's this really interesting blend of East meets West, and not just geographically, but in how they approach finance and tech.
Yeah, it's always been a global financial hub, but now it's becoming this fintech powerhouse. Like over 1,100 fintech and Web3 companies are operating there. That's a 15% jump from last year.
That's not just growth, that's a statement.
And it's a statement backed by real action. The government is really putting their money where their mouth is.
They're not just like watching from the sidelines. It feels very strategic, like they really want to be a leader in this space.
Yeah, they're actively cultivating this growth through targeted initiatives and regulations that are designed to, really fuel innovation.
This isn't some overnight phenomenon either, right?
No, not at all. If we rewind back to the early 2000s, that's when we see the first wave of digital banking solutions starting to pop up.
Oh, so those early online banking platforms were like the first step.
Yeah, those were the first kind of tentative steps toward this digital first world we're seeing now.
Laying the groundwork.
Exactly.
And then the smartphone revolution in the late 2000s, things really took off.
Yeah, mobile payments, digital wallets, those online banking platforms transformed into full-fledged apps. It completely changed how people interact with their money.
Everything's on your phone now.
And as the ecosystem matured in the 2010s, we started seeing dedicated fintech associations popping up, government support programs, major international players entering the market.
Everyone wanted a piece of the action.
It was clear they recognized the potential.
And then you can't forget about blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Right. That added another layer of complexity and opportunity to the mix.
It's almost like a perfect storm of factors that have fueled this growth in Hong Kong.
You've got the regulatory environment.
They're forward-thinking in their approach to regulation, for sure, but they're also prioritizing consumer protection and financial stability.
It's a delicate balance, but they seem to be doing a good job of finding it.
Like the virtual banking licenses in 2019.
That was a huge signal that Hong Kong was ready to shake things up.
That opened the door for those digital-only banks.
Right. It challenged the traditional players.
Yeah.
And forced everyone to up their game.
It was like they threw down the gauntlet. Then you've got the regulatory sandboxes.
Yeah, those are like protected spaces where companies can test out new ideas without getting bogged down by all the usual red tape.
So they can experiment and get feedback before, launching something to the public.
Exactly.
Mitigating risk. But it's not just the regulations, right? Hong Kong's also got amazing tech infrastructure, high-speed internet, widespread smartphone use.
A digitally savvy population.
It's all there.
And they've been really quick to adopt things like cloud computing and AI, which are critical for offering the sophisticated financial services that customers want these days.
And then there's the elephant in the room, blockchain.
Right. Given their history as a major trading hub, it's no surprise they've embraced blockchain.
Especially in trade finance.
It streamlines processes, brings transparency to supply chains, even revolutionizing digital identity.
It's changing the game, for sure. And then underpinning all of this is access to capital.
Venture capitalists have been pouring money into Hong Kong fintech.
They sense the opportunity.
But the government's also actively supporting startups with funding programs and initiatives.
So they're not just sitting back and watching.
No, they're actively involved.
Okay, now let's talk about the people actually driving this innovation. It's a really diverse ecosystem.
Absolutely.
You've got the startups and entrepreneurs.
Challenging the status quo.
Many of them focused on niche markets, like peer-to-peer lending or digital wealth management.
And there's a strong sense of community, too, with accelerators, incubators, and collaborations with larger companies.
So it's not just cutthroat competition.
No, they seem to have figured out that a rising tide lifts all boats.
I find the social impact angle really compelling. A lot of these startups are trying to make financial services more accessible and affordable.
It's not just about profits. It's about creating a more inclusive financial system.
Okay, so with all this talk of disruption, does that mean traditional financial institutions are on their way out?
Not in Hong Kong. They've
Yeah.
been surprisingly proactive.
They've embraced digital transformation.
Many have launched their own innovation labs or partnered with fintech startups.
They realize they have to adapt to survive.
They're using data to personalize services, offering better digital experiences. They're collaborating with startups to tap into their agility and fresh ideas.
So it's not just about survival, it's about recognizing the future is collaborative.
Exactly.
The government's role can't be overstated here either.
Absolutely. From regulatory sandboxes to investments in infrastructure and talent development, they're sending a very clear message. Hong Kong is open for fintech business.
A very deliberate strategy. And it seems to be working. Okay, let's look at some of the specific sectors that are really making waves. Digital payments has to be at the top of the list, right? I mean, Hong Kong is basically a cashless society at this point.
It's pretty amazing how quickly that's become the norm. Mobile wallets, QR codes, the faster payment system. It's also seamless and integrated into daily life,
And security is a top priority.
which is crucial for building trust.
Things like biometric authentication and encryption are becoming standard.
It's about finding that balance between convenience and security. And they seem to be managing it pretty well.
Okay, another sector undergoing a major transformation. Insurance, or insurtech as they call it now.
Ripe for disruption.
Companies are using big data, AI, machine learning, to personalize products, streamline processes, make it more customer-centric.
Online platforms and AI-powered claims processing are making it much more user-friendly.
It's about time. Now, what about wealth tech?
Wealth tech is democratizing access to investment and wealth management. Robo-advisors and digital platforms are making it much easier for people to invest.
Especially for younger generations who are comfortable managing their finances online.
And we can't forget about the growing interest in ESG investing.
Aligning your investments with your values.
It's gaining a lot of traction.
It's great to see how technology is making these options more accessible and transparent. Okay, you can't talk about fintech in Hong Kong without addressing blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Definitely not.
It's everywhere.
Hong Kong is becoming a hub for blockchain innovation, particularly in trade finance, which makes sense given their history.
And while cryptocurrency trading is popular, they're taking a measured approach to regulation.
They want to foster innovation, but also safeguard investors.
It's a delicate balance, but it's working. The establishment of a licensing regime for digital asset trading platforms in 2023 was a big step.
It legitimized the industry.
The Securities and Futures Commission has already issued 3 licenses, with more being reviewed. They're serious about this.
But they're being thoughtful about it, too.
Now, let's not forget about the regulatory bodies.
They play a crucial role in shaping the landscape.
The Hong Kong Monetary Authority, or HKMA, is the key player in banking regulation, and they've been incredibly proactive in supporting fintech development.
Things like their innovation hub and the faster payment system are great examples.
They're embracing new ideas and creating an environment where innovation can flourish. Then you've got the Securities and Futures Commission, or SFC. They oversee the securities and futures markets.
Ensuring fairness and investor protection.
They've been actively engaging with fintech platforms to regulate them effectively without stifling innovation.
A delicate balance, for sure.
And let's not forget about the Innovation and Technology Bureau. They're the engine behind fintech development in Hong Kong.
They're responsible for initiatives like the $500 million Innovation and Technology Fund and a number of programs that support startups and research.
They clearly see the potential of fintech to drive economic growth and position Hong Kong as a global leader in innovation.
It's a long-term vision.
But as with any journey, there are bound to be some challenges along the way.
Absolutely. Despite all the positive developments, there are definitely some headwinds.
Like what?
Well, global competition is fierce.
Other countries want a piece of this pie.
Singapore, London, New York, they're all vying for dominance.
It's a global race. Hong Kong can't afford to rest on its laurels.
They need to keep innovating and differentiating themselves.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly.
Okay, what else?
Cybersecurity.
Right, with everything moving online,
The threat is only getting bigger.
it's a constant game of cat and mouse.
Data breaches and cyber attacks can have devastating consequences.
Hong Kong needs to invest heavily in cybersecurity infrastructure and expertise.
Absolutely.
And then there's the challenge of just navigating the regulations.
The financial services industry is heavily regulated, and fintech is no exception.
It's a minefield, especially for startups that might not have a lot of resources.
It can be really difficult to keep up. Closer collaboration between fintech firms and regulators is key here.
To streamline things and ensure compliance without killing innovation.
Exactly.
Now, we can't talk about challenges without mentioning COVID.
The pandemic definitely had a mixed impact on fintech.
In some ways, it accelerated things. People had to embrace digital solutions.
Right, the adoption of online and mobile financial services really took off
But it also created economic uncertainty.
and exposed some vulnerabilities.
It was a stress test in many ways.
But the Hong Kong fintech industry proved to be quite resilient
They adapted quickly.
and continued to innovate under pressure.
They came out stronger. Okay, so we've covered the history, the key players, the sectors. What about the future?
There are some really exciting trends shaping the fintech landscape in Hong Kong.
Like what?
Artificial intelligence and machine learning. They're already transforming a lot of industries. And finance is no exception.
I can see that.
We're going to see AI being used to personalize financial advice, automate tasks, detect fraud, maybe even make investment decisions.
It's going to change the way we manage our money.
Absolutely.
Okay, what else?
Open banking.
Giving consumers more control over their data.
Imagine being able to share your data seamlessly with different providers.
That's a game changer.
It would create a much more competitive and innovative market.
And then there's sustainable finance.
ESG investing is going mainstream.
It's not a niche trend anymore.
Fintech is playing a key role in making it easier for people to align their investments with their values.
It's exciting to see how technology can be used to create a more sustainable future.
Absolutely.
Okay, to make this all more tangible, let's look at some real-world examples of companies thriving in this environment. We've got a couple of interesting case studies here.
Let's start with Zamali, a hypothetical digital bank targeting millennials.
Okay, tell me about them.
They've got a very user-friendly platform. They've incorporated some gamification elements, and they're really focused on creating a seamless mobile experience.
They're targeting a generation that grew up with video games and social media.
Exactly. They're making finance less intimidating and more fun.
It's a smart strategy. What about another example?
Lumina Tech, a hypothetical insurtech company.
Okay.
They're using AI to personalize insurance.
To make it more relevant to individual needs.
And they're a great example of how fintech companies can collaborate with traditional players. They're working with insurance providers to bridge the gap between innovation and those older systems.
So they're not just trying to disrupt the industry from the outside.
Exactly.
So for those interested in investing in this market, Hong Kong seems like a pretty good bet.
There's definitely a lot of capital flowing into the sector, from venture capitalists and government initiatives alike.
But it's not just about the money, right? It's the whole ecosystem.
The talent, the infrastructure, the supportive regulatory environment, and the government's commitment to making Hong Kong a global fintech leader.
It's a pretty compelling package.
It really is.
And it's not just limited to big players. Smaller investors can get involved through crowdfunding platforms and angel investor networks,
It's democratizing access to investment.
allowing individuals to be a part of something exciting and potentially groundbreaking.
Exactly.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, can we go back to the importance of community in this Hong Kong fintech ecosystem?
Sure. It's one of the things that makes Hong Kong stand out.
What do you mean?
There's a real sense of collaboration and knowledge sharing.
Not just cutthroat competition.
It's refreshing. It's one of the reasons why I'm so optimistic about the future of fintech in Hong Kong.
It seems like they've created an environment where innovation can really flourish.
It's a very positive and supportive atmosphere.
That's great. All right, I want to leave you with a question before we move on. We've covered a lot. Historical context, key players, the trends, the challenges, the opportunities. But what aspect of this whole ecosystem intrigues you the most? What are you most eager to explore further as we continue this deep dive?
I think what stands out to me is how Hong Kong's history as a trading hub, going back to their colonial past, how that's shaped their approach to fintech.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way.
There are some pretty clear parallels, like how they embraced globalization back in the day and how they're approaching the digital economy now.
That same openness to new ideas, the willingness to adapt and innovate.
It's definitely driving their success in fintech.
It's like they took the lessons they learned from their history and applied them to this whole new frontier.
Yeah, exactly. And they've also been really smart about leveraging their position as this gateway between mainland China and the rest of the world.
A bridge between two massive markets.
They're really capitalizing on that.
Now, shifting gears a bit, the diversity of the fintech ecosystem in Hong Kong is really impressive. It's not just one size fits all.
You're right. It's a mix of startups, established financial institutions, government initiatives, and a very active community of investors and mentors and accelerators.
Like a melting pot of ideas and perspectives.
And it's not just about making money either. There's a real social consciousness there.
Yeah, a lot of these startups are focused on solving real problems, making financial services more accessible and affordable for everyone.
It's about creating a more inclusive and equitable financial system.
It's pretty inspiring to see, but it's not all smooth sailing, is it?
Of course not. There are always challenges,
Hmm.
especially in a sector that's growing this quickly.
Like what?
Well, the competition is fierce. Other fintech hubs are catching up.
They gotta stay ahead of the curve.
Hong Kong needs to keep innovating and find ways to differentiate themselves.
Yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly.
Okay, what else?
Cybersecurity is a huge concern.
Right, that's a big one.
As we move more and more of our lives online, the stakes just get higher,
A data breach or a cyber attack could be devastating.
both financially and in terms of reputation.
They've got to be vigilant.
Hong Kong needs to invest in the infrastructure and the expertise to stay ahead of the bad guys.
And what about the regulatory landscape?
That's always evolving.
It seems like they're doing a good job of balancing innovation and consumer protection,
They're constantly refining the framework. It's a tightrope walk, for sure.
but they're learning as they go. All right, looking ahead, what trends do you see shaping the future of fintech in Hong Kong?
AI and machine learning are going to be huge,
They already are in a lot of industries.
and finance is no exception.
Definitely.
I think we'll see AI being used to personalize financial advice, automate tasks, detect fraud, maybe even make investment decisions.
It's going to be a whole new world,
What else? Open banking.
giving consumers more control over their data.
Imagine being able to share your data with different providers so they can compete for your business.
And offer you more personalized services.
Exactly.
They would really shake things up. And what about sustainable finance?
ESG investing is becoming more and more mainstream.
It's not just a trend anymore.
And fintech is making it easier for investors to put their money where their values are.
That's a good thing.
All right, let's talk about some real-world examples. Companies that are succeeding in this environment.
We talked about Zamali, the digital bank from millennials,
They've got a really innovative platform.
making finance more accessible and engaging for a new generation.
Exactly.
What about another example?
Luminitech, the insurtech company. They're using AI to personalize insurance.
Making it more relevant to individual needs.
And they're a great example of how fintech companies can collaborate with traditional players, bridging that gap between innovation and the older systems.
Working together to create something better.
Exactly.
Now, for investors who are looking at this market, Hong Kong seems like a pretty attractive option.
There's a lot of opportunity there.
A lot of capital flowing in.
But it's more than just the money.
It's the entire ecosystem.
The talent, the infrastructure, the supportive regulatory environment, and a government that's fully committed to making Hong Kong a global fintech leader.
They're all in.
Absolutely.
And it's not just for the big players either. Smaller investors can get involved through crowdfunding and angel networks.
It's a really exciting time to be a part of this market.
Okay, before we wrap up this part, can we circle back to something you mentioned earlier? The importance of community in the Hong Kong fintech ecosystem.
Sure, that's something that really sets them apart.
What do you mean?
There's a real sense of collaboration and knowledge sharing in Hong Kong. People are willing to help each other. It's not all cutthroat competition.
That's refreshing to hear.
It's one of the reasons why I'm so optimistic about the future of fintech there.
It seems like a very positive and supportive environment.
It really is.
That's awesome. Okay, I want to leave you with another question. We've talked about a lot of different aspects of this ecosystem, but what intrigues you the most? What are you most eager to explore further as we continue this deep dive? For me, it's how they're bringing together all these different elements, their history of trade, this cutting-edge technology, and this social conscience. It's not just about, building a financial center. It feels like they're building a better future.
That's a great point. There's a sense of purpose there, not just focusing on profit.
It's refreshing, especially in an industry that can seem very focused on the bottom line.
That's what makes Hong Kong different, I think.
It's not just about the technology, it's the people behind it, the problems they're trying to solve.
That human element,
Yeah.
trying to make a positive impact.
As you keep learning about Hong Kong fintech, I'd encourage you to look beyond the headlines, beyond the jargon.
Focus on the people.
Yeah, think about who's behind these companies. What problems are they tackling?
What kind of impact are they trying to make?
This deep dive has given you a good foundation To understand this complex landscape, we've covered the history, the key players, the trends, the challenges.
Even some investment opportunities.
So, as you continue to explore this world, here's something to think about. If you were to launch a fintech startup in Hong Kong, what problem would you want to solve? What kind of impact would you want to have?
Keep that entrepreneurial spirit alive. Maybe one day we'll be talking about your success story.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but we hope this has given you a lot to think about and a new appreciation for this dynamic and evolving industry.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.